Monthly Girls Nozaki-kun, or in Japan, Geken Shoujo Nozaki-kun, was released in 2014. It was pretty well received by its audience, being a lighthearted 12-episode rom-com that is unproblematic and drama-free. And it also has a banger of a theme song. Monthly Girls Nozaki-kun follows the escapades of Umetaro Nozaki, a high school student who is a published shoujo manga author, as well as his cast of colorful friends that help him with the creation of his series. Nozaki is very clueless to the world around him, often thinking about things in terms of his manga. He doesn't have any other interests. He even admits that when he's not making his manga, he just sits around and does nothing. That doesn't happen often because manga keeps him busy, but luckily he has his friends to help. Not only do they help with the inking, drawing, and screen tones, but they're also the inspiration for his characters and storylines. On the outside, this anime seems like your usual slice-of-life story. We have a group of high school friends who help each other with their after-school clubs, they hang out at each other's places, there's our typical festival episode, our beach episode, so it's fair to assume it's going to be primarily focused on romance, like these types of shows tend to be. I mean, the first scene is one of our main characters, Chiyo, confessing her love to Nozaki, and the wind is blowing and the sun is setting and everything's golden, but Nozaki, being so caught up in the world of manga, thinks that she's just a fan of his and instead gives her his autograph. This is the first of many times that the show diverts our expectations. Still, we think the story is going to be romance-centered, so we continue with that mindset throughout the show, and we are consistently being diverted, but it's in a fun and unusual way. I won't dive into the synopsis of each episode to encourage you to go watch it yourself, but I will talk about the characters pretty in depth. Everyone in the cast is super important because they play a role in the creation of the manga in different ways. We'll dive into each of them, their role in Nozaki's manga, and the trope they play into, because I think it's important to know when we talk about how this anime functions. This anime turns gender norms on its head. I'm going to give an example. Let's turn off the visuals. Imagine a romance anime with a character who is erratic with their moods. They act like they don't care about others, but secretly they worry about how everyone sees them. They're easily embarrassed, often seen blushing and tearing up. They're one of the most emotional characters in the show. They often act shy, but they will easily get angry when provoked. They're also easily manipulated by the main characters in the show that they're in. When you imagine a character like this, you think of a girl, right? But it's not. It's Mikoshiba. A man?
I'm man.
Mikoshiba, or Mikorin by his friends, is supposed to represent the tsundere type of character. Somebody who acts aloof or mean, but has a secret softer side when you get to know him. When we first meet him in the anime, he's got a cold glare, and he gives this impression that he's a tough guy. Though he acts this way, he's actually very emotional. I believe he adds the most humor to the show, behaving most of the time like a child. He cries easily, he hides away when he's embarrassed or scared, and he's very easily manipulated into doing things he doesn't want to do. Mikoshiba also has the character type of a womanizer, stating multiple times he's not interested in finding a specific person to settle down with and flirting with all the other girls often. He's the only one without a love interest in the main cast, but that doesn't stop everyone from shipping him with Chiyo anyway. His woman-obsessed character is only fortified by him playing dating sims and collecting 3D anime figures. From an outside perspective, he's kind of a creep, but I think the show does a good job at having him fit this classic character type without making him look down on women or objectifying them. He is still lovable despite his flaws, and honestly, this anime would not be nearly as entertaining without him, as I think some of the best scenes revolve around him. That's just my opinion though. As I mentioned, everyone in the anime has an involvement in Nozaki's manga, so where does Mikoshiba play into that? Well, his art skills are pretty shoddy, but the one thing he excels at is special effects, like flowers and sparkles, which take the manga to the next level. So that's it. He has no other role in the manga.
He's the girl.
Huh? Moniko! I couldn't express what I wanted to say, but I can't be embarrassed, can I? Wait, what? Don't say something so embarrassing! Stupid, stupid, stupid! Yep. I think I can see it now.
Yeah, Nozaki modeled his main character, Mamiko, after Mikoshiba. I mentioned how his characteristics are often associated with teen girls in romance anime and manga, and this was something Nozaki took note of. Most things Mikoshiba goes through, Nozaki turns it into a plot point for his manga. Mikoshiba is so much like Mamiko that when Hori, another character, meets him for the first time, he can't stop calling him Mamiko without even knowing that he was the model for her character in the first place. Also, fun fact, not in the anime, but I wanted to share this because it's so sweet. Mamiko's personality is based on Mikoshiba, but her appearance is based on Chiyo. In the manga, we get to see that the day Chiyo first met Nozaki, she gave him one of her bows, and he subconsciously incorporated that bow and her hairstyle into Mamiko's design, and that is just so cute, and I had to mention that.
Look at this, Nozaki! I've got the bonus footage here! You want to watch it with me?
On that note, Chiyo. Chiyo was an artist in the art club, and she developed a fascination for Nozaki on the first day of school. They both turned up late that day, and so the entrance gate was closed. Nozaki helps Chiyo over the gate, and from that day forward, she developed a huge crush on the guy, despite his obliviousness. The show takes place in the months following Chiyo's confession to Nozaki. After she tries to confess, Nozaki misunderstands and invites her over to his apartment, where he puts her to work filling in the solid black areas of his manga with ink. After this point, she gets swept up in his world of shoujo manga and the friends that help him along the way. She is our classic main girl character. She's sweet, well-liked, easily flustered, and talented, specifically in the art category. What I like about Chiyo's character arc is that over time, she becomes more and more aware of Nozaki's intentions and how their lives are in relation to shoujo manga. When the anime begins, Nozaki's usual antics have her believing things will work out just like in a shoujo manga, until her expectations are subverted, and incidentally, the audience's expectations are subverted. Let me give an example. It's raining, and Chiyo and Nozaki are without their umbrellas. Seiyo ends up giving them her umbrella and running away all cool-like. Chiyo realizes that means she gets to share an umbrella with her crush, so she gets all excited.
Hey, wait a minute. This is for real! We're actually sharing an umbrella right now! Oh my gosh! What if people assume we're a couple or something?
Not only does her expectations of it being romantic not work out, but then she gets her hopes up again that at least Nozaki will use their time together as fodder for a story in his manga, only to realize he went with Seiyo's move in giving her umbrella and running away instead. This is a way that Chiyo sort of acts in a similar manner to the audience. She's the one to point out what we as the audience are probably thinking. She frequently says, "This thing is going to happen, just like a classic scene in a manga." And we think that's going to be the case. But then she's often shocked and let down by real-life events that happen instead. She has a sort of character arc, though, as she, along with the audience, start growing wise to these twists. Halfway through the show in episode 6, we see that she's starting to stop thinking in terms of romance. Nozaki texts her an SOS, and at first she thinks, oh my gosh, he needs help. She figures he's sick, and he wants her to nurse him back to health, and she gets all excited at the prospect of taking care of him. But then she realizes she's getting too worked up.
Yeah, right. I already learned that lesson. You're just getting close to your deadline. I brought you some ink.
We think, oh, she's catching on. She's getting the whole gist of the anime, right? She's starting to think more realistically. Nope. The show has to divert our expectations again by saying he really was sick, and for once, Chiyo's fantasy was actually correct. Even though Chiyo is being proven wrong, we see her starting to grow wise. At the end of the anime, she says it herself.
I might be starting to get better at reading him, but I won't get my hopes up.
Nozaki wants to look at her outfit, and she doesn't even think twice about how he just wants to use it as a drawing reference.
Did I tie it right?
I think so.
That's not a good answer! This is for your manga, right? If you get it wrong, you'll be a disgrace to your entire country!
Right.
Everyone in the main cast is connected to Nozaki, so Chiyo eventually meets them as she gets closer to him. But the only exception to this is Seiyo. Oh my god, Seiyo. Don't get me started on Seiyo. Seiyo had a lot of the same classes as Chiyo, so they ended up becoming close friends. I think their relationship is a pretty good reflection of Chiyo's character, because only the most patient and kind-hearted person would purposefully spend any extra time with Seiyo. Needless to say,
she's oblivious.
Which you're one to talk, Nozaki. For this scene in the manga, Nozaki calls her Kai or KY, standing for Kuki o Yomanai, which also just means oblivious and thick-skinned. I believe this personality type is more often used for male characters in manga, because when Nozaki puts her into his manga, he makes her a guy. Once again, reversing gender roles in this anime, which is really cool to see. Seiyo is an interesting character. She's unaware of the world around her, but like, in a bad way. She unknowingly says things that upset other people, she gets in the way of everyone, and is just overall self-centered. She thinks that the problems she encounters are because she's just too perfect, and doesn't acknowledge that any issues may be her fault. From what I gather, she also doesn't perform well in school, as she often doesn't pay attention to what other people are saying, and teachers are often chasing after her for misconduct and tardiness. However, there are other sides to Seiyo. Turns out she has a little nickname, Lorelei of the Glee Club. This being a reference to Lorelei in Greek mythology. I don't know if it's Greek. This is a reference to Lorelei in mythology, who was a siren that lured sailors to their death because her singing was so beautiful. That nickname is rightfully given, as Seiyo's singing voice is incredibly beautiful, and it blows Nozaki away when he hears it for the first time. Chiyo mentions to him that Seiyo's singing is known to have healing properties, so Nozaki ends up getting a copy of her songs to play on his own time. Seiyo has another side too. She's not just oblivious after all. She's
Oblivious and athletic!
Seiyo often helps out the male and female basketball teams. The coaches call her in to help the players, but not in the way you'd think. When she plays basketball, she's aggressive, dangerous, and she doesn't share the court. And it's supposed to help the teams develop strategies and be prepared for the harshest of competitors. However, her behavior on the court is so traumatizing that it's preventing one of the players from sleeping at night. Enter Wakamatsu, a high-spirited and sweet freshman who has suffered the most from Seiyo's torment. Referred to as Waka, he is very nice to the people around him, and he's always willing to offer a helping hand. Even when he tries to be mean, it often comes off as a nice gesture, and that's because the poor guy is not very bright. Where some of our cast members are oblivious to certain things, he's just dumb altogether. He's very frequently drawn with this goofy little face to show you there's not much going on up there. He's so cute, look at him. Waka met Nozaki before he became a manga artist, as Nozaki used to be a pretty skilled basketball player in middle school. When Waka sees him again, now that they're in high school, he immediately wants to catch up and hang out, and Nozaki uses that as a means to get another person to help with his manga. Like Mikoshiba, Nozaki has turned him into a character in a story. And Waka is also responsible for screen toning, which is another step in the manga making process. He's manipulated into this because none of the other characters know how to do screen tones, and when he shows he has a natural gift at it, Chiyo and Hori immediately make him do it and have him believe that it's the most basic work that someone can do, and because he's an underclassman, it's what he's supposed to be doing. In reality, it's much harder than he realizes, but now he's helping make the manga. How he becomes a character in Nozaki's manga, however, is a much longer story. Waka mentions to Nozaki how he barely sleeps at night because Seiyo has basically traumatized him with how aggressive she's being during basketball practice. Nozaki accidentally plays a few seconds of Seiyo's music, and as it turns out, from those few seconds of music, Waka is able to fall asleep. This girl's singing really does have healing properties. He doesn't realize that it's Seiyo singing, so he insists to get a copy of that song in exchange for helping Nozaki with his manga. Waka's insomnia issues are no more, but that doesn't stop the fact that Seiyo is still terrorizing him. It's an interesting dynamic where Waka falls in love with this Lorelei that sings to him every night, and he doesn't even realize that she's the person who's been causing him so much grief in the first place. Nozaki takes this and runs with it, creating two side characters that hate each other, but they talk to each other over the phone and fall in love without realizing their true identities. Nozaki likes to follow Waka around and have him report back to him with any interactions he has with Seiyo to use as fuel for those side characters in his story. Seiyo and Waka's relationship is like a frenemies kind of deal. Does Waka also switch up gender roles? Well, just as Nozaki said for Mikoshiba,
he's the girl.
In my world, everyone's a pony, and they all eat rainbows and poop butterflies.
Waka's behavior is very in line with feminine traits in anime. He's similar to Mikoshiba in that way. He's ditzy and easily manipulated. He gets flustered by Seiyo very easily. I mean, there's a scene where he admits that he hated spending the day with Seiyo, and when she realizes that, she says, okay, I'll just go with someone else on my next outing, and that freaks him out. He realizes he doesn't like the idea of her spending time with anyone else but him, and when we see this translated into Nozaki's manga, it makes perfect sense to see a female character behaving this way. You know, very emotional, unable to make up their mind, you know? Seiyo influences a male character in contrast, as she's very brash, aggressive, rude, and finds gross things very funny. She's far from being feminine, but she doesn't care, and you know what? Good for her. Thus, this is another set of characters that have swapped traditional gender roles, and I think the anime does a great job at pointing it out. When Mikoshiba, Waka, and Seiyo are turned into characters of the opposite gender, it's the anime's way of saying, this is how it usually is in Japanese animes and manga. We're aware that these traits usually belong to specific genders, so let's give them the opposite to point out the absurdity. So, Waka, Seiyo, and Mikoshiba are great examples of defying gender norms, but we haven't even looked at the most obvious character who does this, and I believe the anime handles it really well. Mikoshiba tells the group that he's friends with the crown prince of the high school. His friends, and incidentally us, the audience, assume he's referring to a man, until it's revealed to be Yu Kashima, a kind-hearted and apparently very intelligent girl in the same grade as Chiyo. I say apparently because Kashima is the top student in her grade, but her behavior says otherwise. She's about as clueless as the rest of the cast, often making assumptions based on little evidence and playing into the overall dumb chaos that the group creates when they're together. Then again, this show is mostly twist humor, where we expect one thing and we get another, so Kashima has to subvert our expectations too. The reason she's our prince character isn't just for her princely looks, or because she plays the lead male roles in school plays, but also because she constantly flirts with the other girls around them, charming them with sweet words and compliments. There isn't much to Kashima on her own, as most of her storyline revolves around Hori, an upperclassman who's her main love interest. The two have a love-hate relationship, where Kashima is constantly annoying Hori, and he's constantly beating her up for it. Literally. I'll get more into that in a second, though. Kashima and Seiyo are the only ones that don't know about Nozaki's manga. In Seiyo's case, she just doesn't care to find out. But in Kashima's case, the group is determined to not let her find out, since she's often willing to help out without realizing the effects she has. Since she's so flirty with the other girls at school, they often follow her around, even at drama club rehearsals, so when she tries to help, her posse often only makes things worse. The group is afraid she'll do the same if she tries to help out with Nozaki's manga, so they try to make sure she never finds out. As a result, we see a lot of Kashima viewing the group's antics as an outsider. She sees them posing for reference photos and making notes in the margin of manga, and she thinks everyone is crazy. Thankfully, she never catches on. It's never stated in the anime, but I think Nozaki took elements of Kashima and put him into his male lead, Suzuki. I mean, Suzuki is often very princely, a lot of girls flock to him, and he's good at delivering cheesy romantic lines just like Kashima. There's a scene where Nozaki suggests that in the story, he might have girls flock Suzuki to share an umbrella with him, and then Kashima appears with girls fighting to share with her. Like I said, it's never stated who Suzuki is modeled after, or if Kashima influenced any specific character, but I can see a lot of overlap between the two, and scenes like this might be the show's way of implying that. But that's just my theory. Technically speaking, Kashima is not involved in the manga in any way, right? For all we know, she doesn't actually influence Suzuki, as nobody ever says that, and she doesn't even know Nozaki makes the manga, so she can't help with the production like the others. So, knowing this, you'd think Kashima has nothing to do with it. But inadvertently, she does. And that's because of Hori. Hori is the oldest of the group, being a third year while everyone else, except Waka, is a second year. He's the president of the drama club and was responsible for recruiting Kashima when she first arrived at school as a first year. He mistook her for a boy and suggested she'd be a great male lead, which Kashima just rolls with. Hori himself is as great of an actor as Kashima, but he's too short to play any of the main roles, and he'd stick out against the weaker supporting actors. So instead, he sticks to working behind the scenes making backgrounds and props. Kashima's aloof attitude bothers him a lot as he likes order, so he's often chasing after Kashima when she's late to rehearsals because she's busy flirting with girls. Kashima often mistakes his anger for jealousy or even affection, thinking that it's a sign he feels really close with her if he feels comfortable enough to beat her up and drag her around. It sounds toxic now that I'm saying all of this out loud, but it's not. The show just plays up on the slapstick of it all. Hori is our typical hot-headed, short king character. Kashima loves pushing his buttons and making him irritated, though most of the time it's not her original intent. Hori seems like the most sane one in the group, as very rarely he's ever the victim of the twist humor the show relies on. Hori's usually the one to point out the absurdity in situations or get agitated about them instead of playing into the confusion everyone else seems to experience.
Nozaki's gym elective is judo.
What the hell am I looking at here?
Hori's usually the one to call out Nozaki when he's coming up with ridiculous ideas for his manga, or he's the one to yell at Kashima when she's caught up in her prince-like fantasies, and very rarely does he misunderstand situations like his other friends do. In that sense, he's the most grounded character in the main cast. While Nozaki can draw characters really well, he's hopeless at drawing backgrounds, which is where Hori comes in. His experience with background work for the drama club made him a perfect candidate, so the two struck an agreement. He draws Nozaki's backgrounds in exchange for Nozaki writing plays that Kashima can perform in. Hori secretly loves giving Kashima the spotlight and having her play princely roles, so he relies on Nozaki to make scripts that will fit Kashima perfectly. And that's where I say that Kashima plays a specific role in creating the manga after all, because without her, Hori wouldn't want these specific scripts in the first place, and would have no reason to want to help Nozaki. I mean, maybe he would do it out of the kindness of his heart, but by the sounds of it, the background work is some of the trickiest, since Nozaki's very vague about what he wants, and it takes a lot of time to the point where Hori often has to spend the night at Nozaki's apartment just to get everything done. Just based on Hori's personality, I don't know if he'd go that far if he wasn't getting something out of it. Other than that, Hori doesn't really play much of a role without Kashima. The two sort of rely on each other to create jokes and romantic tension. Their whole shtick is that Kashima thinks Hori wants to be a girl because of his interest in schoolgirl manga, which is just because he helps draw for it. She ends up harassing him often by giving him her clothes or carrying him because she thinks it's part of his fantasy. One of my favorite things about their dynamic is how clear Hori is when it comes to Kashima's nonchalant attitude. He just wants her to do well, and he knows she can because he gets excited when she's putting her all into her performances. But too often, she skips rehearsals and makes things harder because of the girls that flock around her, and it gets on his nerves. Kashima is oblivious to his anger towards her behavior, thinking that his outbursts just mean he's comfortable around her and that he's just trying to hide his true feelings, which everyone tells her repeatedly is not true. Hell, even Hori deflects her often, and quite bluntly.
Hori! Who do you think is the cutest, me or Nozaki?
Nozaki.
He didn't even hesitate, dude. Despite this being their dynamic, we see Hori really caring for Kashima, and vice versa. A lot of their actions are done just because they simply care for each other. Hori even tells Nozaki he doesn't care to act anymore if it means he can watch Kashima. This is literally the sweetest scene in the entire show.
Don't you want to be an actor too?
Me? You know, I don't.
She's the first one to figure out the big secret.
Ah, so that's why she's in such a big hurry, right? She needs to go talk to the prince.
We've got Kashima. So I'm happy with watching.
See, they're sweet when they want to be, it's just not that often. They're my favorite couple, so I'm gonna stop talking about them before I make them sound worse than they actually are. Just go watch the anime, they're not that bad, I swear. Well, I guess that just leaves Nozaki, our oblivious but well-meaning main character. As I've mentioned before, the man is clueless. Chiyo is not subtle in her feelings for him, even going as far as describing Nozaki's characteristics to him directly when he asks who she likes.
Why are you attracted to someone like that?
His entire character and all the jokes surrounding him are all because he's so unaware of how other people perceive him. While I feel like all the main cast is oblivious to a certain extent, he's the worst case of them all. The good thing about Nozaki is that even though he doesn't show affection and uses his friends for the sake of his manga, he's still written to show that he cares about his friends in the end. A lot of the jokes surrounding him are about his friends, especially Chiyo, thinking he's doing something for the right intentions. But the truth is, he's looking for ideas for his manga. A good example of this is when he lets his friends stay over for the night when a rainstorm shuts down the trains and they can't go home. At first, it seems like such a nice thing for him to do out of the kindness of his heart, until it's discovered that he's using their impromptu sleepover as an idea for his next chapter of manga.
Always happy to lend a helping hand.
Nozaki!
Thanks a lot.
You're the best!
I won't forget this.
That's what friends are for, right? Ideas for next chapter. Mamiko and friends have a slumber party. Stay over because of rain. Talk about boys. Eat dinner together.
Oh my god.
I feel Nozaki is best described as an arohere, a character who is absolutely oblivious to any romantic affection. They may otherwise be quite smart or talented, and we definitely see that in Nozaki's writing and drawing abilities, but when it comes to Chiyo very frequently showing her affection, he's oblivious. Though, since the anime revolves around Nozaki, I feel like I've talked enough about this guy. I mean this with so much love in my heart, but I think every character in this anime is a varying level of obliviousness. A lot of the comedy and jokes derive on one character being oblivious, and that role is often swapped. In one scene, it could be Seiyo acting as the oblivious one, while Nozaki's like, is she serious? How can she not realize what's going on? And then, in another scene, it's Nozaki as the clueless one, as Chiyo gives him hints that she likes him and wants to be with him. The characters take turns being the straight man, to put it simply, and honestly, I don't think it gets old. The antics Nozaki and his friends get up to are very similar to the way my friends and I used to interact with each other, because if we're being real, teenagers aren't that bright. Watching this group of friends fumbling around and making mistakes, but still being super close in the end, it feels very genuine. It really feels like this group of friends are just really friends. And sometimes it's hard to get that in anime. In a lot of high school animes, we're given a group of friends and just told they like each other. And maybe we see them hang out, but we don't see them sharing common interests, or joking around, or just having fun. But we get that in this anime, and it feels genuine. They're brought together by Nozaki's anime, but you can feel the chemistry between all of them despite their different character types. They play well off each other. I mean, look at Hori. His rationality works well with Nozaki, but he also loses his temper often, which works great with Kashima, who loves to tease. But at the same time, he also has a sweet side that we see when he's around the lovable Chiyo. This twist humor is something the show relies a lot on, because it's not only well done, but it's the show's way of poking fun at the genre of modern Japanese romance stories. The anime shows us Nozaki's manga as a way of saying, this is how these stories usually go. But then it gives us real-life escapades of our main cast and says, this is how it really is. Things are never that rose-tinted. Romance manga and animes usually crank up the characters to 1,000. These characters often have one trait or character type, and that's all they are. But high schoolers are more complex than that. And the characters in Monthly Girls Nozaki-kun represent their character types, but they have more to them, like how we would see in real-life high schoolers. Nozaki turning his friends into manga characters show that there's some truth to how these characters are written. Like yes, high schoolers can be moody, like Makoshiba might get flustered for a moment, but Nozaki represents how manga artists take those truths and play that up for the sake of storytelling. Now, that's not to say there's anything wrong with your average shoujo manga. I love cheesy romance stories where the characters are cliched, but this show isn't trying to be that. It's trying to show us how ridiculous it can be sometimes, and how real life is rarely like the stories we consume. On the surface, we think that Monthly Girls Nozaki-kun is a romance anime. I think that's something that some audiences are mistaken of. This is not primarily a romance anime, despite the fact that there are obvious crushes and coupling. This is a comedy poking fun of romance anime. The romance elements have to be present in order for the show to make fun of it, but the characters being in love is not the point. When I watch romance animes, it's obvious the end goal is for the characters to get together, but that's not the point of the show. We think it's being set up that way in the end. Chiyo and Nozaki are sitting in front of the fireworks, it's the last moments of the season, and for any normal anime we expect there to be a confession and a kiss and the credits roll. But that never happens.
Huh? What did you say?
I said I feel that way too. I love fireworks.
Ooh, interference by fireworks. He misheard the confession. Ooh. Well, Brian, it was a very strong offensive on Sakura's part, but unfortunately her opponent is very dumb.
Chiyo confesses, Nozaki doesn't hear her because of the noise, she laughs, and that's the end. Normally, this would leave me feeling upset because there's no resolution, but I didn't feel that way. Now, I can't speak for everyone who saw the ending, but it didn't leave that empty feeling of wanting more for me. I think that's because the romance was not the goal of this anime. It was a parody all along. We had been going through all these twists throughout the anime that it didn't feel unusual at the end. It was expected of this show to even subvert our expectations. Sure, it would be nice if Nozaki reciprocated, but we don't expect it at this point. The show sets us up for this ending with every episode, so it doesn't feel disingenuous. Before I conclude, I also have to really mention that the English voice actors really carry the humor of this show too. Their line delivery kills me, even after watching these episodes multiple times.
He's got the easiest kind of face to draw, so yeah, he's my type.
Wow, that obi looks so cool.
Oh, you think so?
Your outfit is neato.
Oh, stop it.
You are totally impressive.
Come on! Now show that prince who's boss!
Hey, why are you screaming, Rory?
Yes, perfect!
Sorry,
Oh, dude, I totally got stuck with this super hot babe, but I'm too lame to talk to her. I'm like so pathetic. Duh.
My character is supposed to lose, but I can't help but feel this urge to pick her up by the feet and fling her across the room.
Wakamatsu, first year. I'm on the basketball team.
That was the move that made LeBron cry.
What did I say about the frickin' box?
I remember when...
Monthly Girls Nozaki-kun is an anime I can't recommend enough. I know I dove kind of deep into the characters, but I haven't mentioned a lot of the gags and scenes that make this show so itself, if that makes any sense. This show really does a great job at being humorous without being absurd. Like I said, it really feels like the kind of antics that my high school friends and I would get into, you know, minus the whole manga making thing. It feels real, and the characters having different sides to them really helps create that feeling as well. In a way, it makes it sort of comforting. There's no real drama or tension, the jokes aren't uncomfortable or gross, it's just a wholesome and happy 12 episodes. If you're a fan of comedic animes, you could definitely binge this in a day, so go and check it out. Maybe even let me know what you think. Okay. Ginger! Shut up! She's being so whiny. I'm about to say this thing. I might not add this in the video. Hold on, I gotta burp. Thus, this is another set of characters that have swapped out traditional gender roles. Thank you so much for watching. I'm not going to put that at the end. There's going to be no closing. No, thank you so much for watching. That's just going to be how it ends. Let me know what you think. End.